actually going to change some of the coasts from the other side, in the sense that we're going to have strange shifting patterns of jet streams, which will cause sometimes stationary and sometimes scouring, that's the word we get, rainstorms that in turn will bring in rain at such volumes that we'll all sit around and gasp and wonder, and they'll create landslides, mudslides actually, which will in turn change whole river valleys and cause lakes to exist that didn't, and dry up rivers in other areas. So it's going to be a real fun summer.
Well, and that's just part of the Earth changes, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like this Earth has not done this before.
Correct.
It's actually not like it still doesn't do it all the time. It's just not in such a way that we are usually able to see it quite as definitively. I mean, this is usually stuff that happens over years, and you get used to something and you don't really notice the changes.
Right, and this brings us back to the whole idea of the changing language that we've seen over the past couple of years. Because changing language is reflecting the fact that people are changing underneath that language, and people are noticing, and they're noticing in larger and larger numbers, and to be honest, they're getting a little upset about it. And they're not getting the answers they want, and so they're going out questing, and this is causing a whole series of ripples in the language all over the place, and I think leading to a very positive step, which is, waking up and smelling the roses, so to speak. And it's being reflected in the language, and we're seeing that the level of geologic change has run up against the academic view where it's only 3 millimeters a year, don't worry about it, nothing's happening, and so on. And everybody is saying, no, wait a second, I'm not buying that anymore. You may still try and sell it, but I'm not buying it. And so we're going to have a whole mess of people that are going to run into this wall of what we call cognitive dissonance, where they have to change their worldview that they've carefully cultivated over X number of years in order to accommodate new data that's coming around and slapping them in the face. And it can't be denied anymore.
And that kind of goes on with the whole solar system. I mean, they're talking about different planets now and how there's, definite water and movement, and they can see rivers and stuff in planets that they hadn't seen before. Kind of gets to the end of this first part 0 under the climate changes here, or the
Terra entity stuff.
Yeah, Terra entity, when it talks about the influence of the whole solar system, and of course the spewing lies and disinformation about the solar system changes themselves.
Right. But again, we're seeing in the language that a lot of people are asking questions that are eliciting answers from a wide source and changing the language even relative to that. And that also ties back into the fact that the powers that be are a little bit ticked off about it and getting upset because people just are not buying the lie anymore.
Right. Exactly. Well, now that we've gotten to that, why don't we step into the next one right underneath it, which is the Rude Pie Boys. That's kind of a fun one.
Yeah, well, it would have been fun if we hadn't actually had people die in London as a result of this.
Well, that's true.
The pie actually turned out to be rather prophetic, and I hate to use that word, but certainly synchronistically chosen, because some of the protesters were operating under the banner of PIE, which is Protest Injustice in Economies.
Uh-huh.
And so we now have this situation where we were describing what's going to happen for the British and for the French over the course of the summer within that section. This is part of global pop.
Right.
All of the changes are not just happening in the populace of the U.S. The whole planetary mass of humanity is thrashing around, and we're seeing a lot of the evidence of that thrashing in our language. The changes in the direction of the popular culture can be seen now in very small ways as a battle between the controlling forces and those people that are just going to simply opt out and not allow them to control them anymore, regardless of what it takes. And it's causing a certain level of confrontation, which is coming out in the language, and we're also seeing it expressed in my opinion, futile protests against the G20. And I say futile because I was sitting here thinking, how much nicer it would have been, especially for the poor individual that was killed, if nobody had protested the G20, if we just let them meet and no one showed up and basically said, we're going to ignore you. This is so much for you, this is how much we think of you. We're not even going to emotionally trouble ourselves to come out and yell nasty names at you. We're going to go about our business and create a whole new world. But that would shock them. That would horrify them, that be everybody stop and turn their back on them, so to speak, and put them in their place that way. We have to understand that the more we play into their, it's very much like martial art. If you want someone to do something, you sort of set them up. You extend a hand in Aikido thinking that the person who's your partner at the moment and is coming to attack you is going to grab at that wrist. And then you say, aha, that's just what I wanted to happen. And it's kind of like that with the powers that be. They want you to protest. They want all that emotional energy. They want you fixated on certain things that they then control. And it's really irritating for them when masses of people say, nope, sorry, you're just a waste of time, get out of my way.
And it's kind of interesting because last week we had a guest on, and that's what he talked about, was that's what the powers to be, if you will. They feed off that negative energy, and it kind of actually it kind of boosts them up while we expend our energy, protesting, yelling, and screaming, and whatever else we might be doing.
Yeah, and think of the energy you're transferring to them. Yes, exactly.
And they're sucking it right in. It's like they got a vacuum cleaner and they're holding it in there and they use it.
Yeah. Well, even beyond that, they know that they have your mind as a slave in reaction to their actions.
Yep. It's predictable.
Yeah.
It's predictable. And, I think what we need to do is take a little short break. When we come back, we're going to get into some more of those. I think we'll probably go and maybe start with the next part on that because, we've got so much to cover tonight.
Sure.
I want to make sure we get as much information out as we can.
Like I say, my bruises are coming out. You guide.
All right, so you stay with us. We're going to be right back with more of Clif High right after this short break. We'll be right back. All right, everyone, welcome back, and we are here with Clif High, and we have had a pretty good information that's come out of the first segment there, Clif, and I do know we have a little short question that we need to answer in relation to what we left off on the first segment talking about, which was should people expect unrest and riots in the USA, and to what extent? And I'm not sure if you want to answer that now or when we get later on into the reports, because I think there's more of that coming later on down in some of the later reports, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're quite correct about that. Let's just leave that till later because there's a larger background to that.
Okay, so I think that's a good idea. So we will get to you 9626, and we will get to that question. But right now we're going to go into the next report, which is part 1 of the series 1309, to something that you have termed meta-science, and you're calling it, subtitling it fear science. So talk to us a little bit about the fear science.
Yeah, you'll start seeing it in we've already encountered it, and it's in major prestigious publications. It's being run in the guys in articles in BBC publications, science journals, and so on. And you'll start seeing these articles around where basically, if you actually look through the article, maybe 1,000 words or less, it'll sum up to nothing but be afraid. There's no real new science. There's no real reason the article should be out there now, and yet they've created some reason, put it in the headline of why be afraid, and then they go on to describe being afraid and so on. But they don't really tell you the precise scientific reason as to what's going on with this. And so we're seeing this global sea level looks to rise far higher than forecast because of changes in the polar ice sheets, a team of researchers has suggested. And then it goes on to say, but we don't know anything, and this does not include any impact from melting ice or ice breaking off. And it's kind of like, okay, then what does it include? And you look, and they never answer any of your questions about it, and it's basically a series of sound bites in text form, one statement after the other, that lead to a conclusion of be afraid, but they do it in such a way that they're manipulating that fear even as you read down through the article. And we all need to be aware of this. So it's a conscious effort out there to hype fear around those things that you think are too large for you to worry about, and thus you must assign over to the powers that be in the form of government, etc., such as, global climate change.
Yeah, like our governments can't even do anything about that anyway, right?
Right. They can't, but they sure have that idea sold to lots of people.
Yeah, don't you worry about it, we will, and that's all about.
Yeah, hey, FEMA's got your back. No worries.
Huh. Yeah, well, that's scary in and of itself right there, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, just that whole, boy, you could have said just about anything and that wouldn't have bothered me, but that did. Yeah, got my back is probably right. But, yeah.
Yeah, and it makes the hair crawl when you hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
And I will tell you, is one of the things, like I was reading that, that you have in there. For me, I've been reading a lot of these different articles. Researchers say, and this and this and this, but again, there's really nothing in it. And you just look at the journalism and you go, that's not journalism. That's somebody that's been spoon-fed information. So if it feels like it's been spoon-fed, it probably is.
Right, and if you come away from an article with an impression of worry and fear in your mind, they designed it and put it there.
Yeah, so it's working very well.
Yeah.
You kind of have to ask yourself, if that's what it's eliciting. So, let's see. I think, can we pop down to the space goat farts in part 1 and have you talk about that? Range of pain, the list, erosion, discontinuity.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that we see. That's one of our larger entities simply because there's so much stuff that's officially denied and we had to put it somewhere, so we created the Space Goat Farts entity. And it houses the officially denied and the absolutely unknown, and then the stuff that we have evidence for, but we don't really know what it is we're actually looking at. There's all kinds of things within there. But it's a very large entity, and as such, it collects an eclectic mixture of stuff. So here we have a situation where we're looking at the forecast linguistically that we're going to start seeing shifting of resources in a meaningful way. And if you're an aware observer and you're reading the mainstream media, you'll see hints about it. You might see a report of a new concrete factory being built in the far north, or Finland, Russia, something like this. Or you may see other hints that resources are being placed towards the poles. And the data is suggesting that as the increases in awareness, the undeniability of the pan-solar system changes occur, we'll see more and more and more hints of these resources being shifted. And that will also feed into the whole concept, and people will ask themselves why are they building that seed fault? Why did they rush it through? Why are they building all those cement plants way up north in Russia? And so on and so on. And it all comes back to the whole 2012. And we knew years ago that it would be a big meme, that the public would pay serious attention to this, and that we would get to a point where a significant amount of the population would shift over into an understanding of what's going on as to cause mass popular behavioral changes, which is just what the powers that be don't want. And apparently that's going to be occurring over the course of summer relative to a number of items that are showing up within our Space Goat Farts area. And so, for instance, we have the idea that coming out of here that we have a list of predicted effects, so to speak, that is described in the language as being relatively old, and some portion of it will be leaked out as the economic stuff really starts squeezing hard on government over the course of summer. And basically the list in itself is rather innocuous. But what is going to be rather startling to everybody is it's kind of a certain smoking gun saying they knew this much this long ago. What else do they know? And it's also going to tie in, I think, probably to the betterment of the film and to the detriment of the powers that be with the release of that 2012 movie this summer, because it'll be almost simultaneous to that in that area that we expect the list to start percolating out through this whistle